Hey, good morning, everybody. So, this is going to be the watch list for Monday, July 15th. And as always, I do want to start with the economic news. So, Monday's going to be a little dicey. Looks like we have Fed Chairman Powell speaking at 12 o'clock noon Eastern Time, which is going to be 9 a.m. Pacific. So, you'll probably have a couple hours, 2 hours. For the market to open to possibly take some trades before he talks, and then we'll see directionally where it goes. On Tuesday, a couple things that you want to be aware of again before the market opens. So that's always a plus. Is you're going to have retail sales. So how is the consumer doing? Import price index. So are imports going up or down, which is going to impact inflation. And then the home builder confident index. So the one thing we noted last week with home builders is that new home inventory is increasing dramatically. But so is the cost of those homes, which is why inventory is starting to build. We also have another Fed governor speaking. I'm not concerned about this one, so I think you'll be just fine. When we look at Wednesday, we're going to be talking again more about housing, building permits, the Fed beige book. Nothing that should be significant that'll move the market, but just be aware that when news drops, you could always get a spike to the upside or the downside. We're definitely going to watch jobless claims on Thursday because unemployment is ticking higher. And then on Friday, we have a couple Fed presidents that are going to be speaking. Definitely, I would pay attention to both of these. They're pretty influential within the market. So again, just be aware of the timing. And if you're in a trade, just note that you could have quite a bit of volatility. But the man to pay attention to is going to be Monday, and he will probably set the tone for the market as the week progresses. But let's go ahead and move into some of the actual charts. Crazy week last week where we had Powell testifying. We did have some market movement. And then on Thursday, we had a huge sell-off and then a huge gain run right back up to that prior all-time high, right? And then what did the market do? It sold it off again. So the market is clearly very jittery that if you're going to get some bad news, everybody's going to run for the door at the exact same time. We've kind of talked about that before. You know, my belief is you'll make more money when people panic sell than when they buy on greed. So what would be the levels that I would be watching? Couple, the all-time high, 563. Are we going to run back up to this? This would be a liquidity zone, or 555, where we've literally used it on a 1-hour time frame multiple times, found some support, and now we're trading between these two zones. One thing that you can do is you could do a fib level from a pivot low to a pivot high, the pre-market to the market open, and note that we are bouncing pretty much on Monday when the market opens right around this 559.49. So you'll want to see how price reacts here for a push higher, or if we fail the what's called the golden zone between the 50 and the 618, I would believe that we are going to push back down here to this 550-561, where therefore might be an opportunity to go long. We lose the 550-561, then I think you're going to have a bit of a ways down. Yeah, we have some support intermediary here, but the next level that would probably be, again, market likes these round numbers, 550, 555, 560. Would be all the way down here back down to 550. So if we fail 555, I definitely think that we're going to be pushing lower. Just for confirmation, let's see if we're pretty close. You can see we have a lot of demand here, but it's very low, shallow time frames. 30-minute demand, 30-minute demand, 45-minute, 30-minute, 30-minute. We don't start to really get heavier into some 1-hour demand or 2-hour demand until this 550 level. So demand level by time creates strength. And then you'll see we get some really, really strong demand all the way down here where we have 4-hour, 2-hour, 2-hour, 4-hour. So, I mean, this would be definitely a real buy-up zone if we were to get down here to 542. Is that possible? Yeah. Do I think it's probable? Not unless there's some really bad news. So what I would watch for this week is kind of trading between this 555, 563. I know it's a very wide range, but use your fib levels as guides to see, do we push higher or do we break below 558.50? And then my first target would be 557.10. Then after that, it would be this 555.61. Let's take a look at the triple Qs. Again, tremendous volatility. Same thing that happened with SPY. What was leading this lower was a huge sell-off in Tesla, almost 10%, Nvidia, AMD, Microsoft, Apple, Google. I mean, you name it. Everything was selling off on Thursday, and there was just no stopping it. The market did find some support down here at this 490 level. You can see that we pushed back higher. What I would watch for, again, is a pivot high to a pivot low. And you'll note we are rejecting this 499.39. The market pushed right back up to it on Friday. And then what did it do? It sold off lower. So let's go ahead and do a fib in the reverse level. From this low to this high, what are we doing? We are now bouncing the 50 level, going back up. So what would I watch for? One, if we can hold this level, I think we will keep pushing and retest this 497, then 499, 501, back to the all-time highs. We break this golden zone, then we are going to 493, 492, and then ultimately 490. So that's kind of how you can use fib levels between pivot high and pivot low, pivot high, to say, where am I going to reject from a high to a low? Where am I going to bounce from a low to a high? And that's exactly what the market's doing. Now, obviously, we would never take the trade on the 1 hour, but what we would do is we would watch the overall 1 minute for our entries and our exits. And you'll note that that's pretty much exactly what happened. It rejected the 618 up here. And then what did it do on Friday on the market close? Just really trended lower. So keep an eye on that for the Qs. What I want to do now is I want to take a look at some of the individual names. Amazon was having such great relative strength. And the issue here, I think, is that Jeff Bezos was literally selling billions of dollars of shares, which introduces a lot of liquidity into the market. So I believe last week and the week before, I was calling for a break and hold above 200 to go long. Well, what happened? We pushed up to 289, drop. Same level, drop. Same level, really dropped, right? Now, where would I look to find some overall support? Is this prior pivot where we rejected, we came up, and then we used it as support. Now, mind you, we're looking for areas of interest, not exact hard and fast dollar amounts. So let's do this. What I would do is I would say that we have demand from this price zone right in here. And you could kind of see it, 191 to 192. We come down, we push up here, we push up, here, we push up. Now, so what am I going to watch for? One, I would love to see this retest. I don't think unless there's really good reason on Monday for this thing to push back up to 200, but 200 would be my target. But if we fail this 190, 191, then my next level would be down here coming to 185. Let's go ahead and test that theory. Spot on, without a doubt, right? You can see that we have tremendous demand here. Good solid time frames, right? 2 hour, 3 hour, 1 hour, 2 hour, lots of buyers. Possibly that they push us up. You fail this and start to head into my zone and break below, the next set of buyers is all the way down here. So your put target is going to be right around 185. That's what I would be doing. If the market is weak, I'd be buying Amazon 185 puts. So that's kind of how you use technical levels along with supply and demand. Let's go ahead and turn that off, and I want to take a look at a couple other ones. Next one is going to be Nike. So Nike on earnings, maybe I talked about this 3 weeks ago, huge sell-off, right? Let's go to a weekly chart because we haven't been this low in the stock since 2020. It's almost 4 years ago. But what I do like is that they're holding price right here in this level, okay? I think this could be an opportunity to finally start going long Nike if the overall consumer sentiment and retail sales numbers this week comes in good. Look at this insane volume, tremendous volume here. People getting in and getting out of position. So remember, for every buyer, there's a seller. So you can't have ridiculous volume unless people are changing hands on the stock. So would I be playing this one with calls? Probably not. But what I would be doing is maybe looking at leaps and going out a year and buying the 85, 90 leap. Or what I would consider doing is going out and actually acquiring the stock and then selling covered calls against it in an attempt to say, a year from now, could we get back up to $100 a share? And if you could get back up to $100 a share, that's a pretty darn good return from $73 up to $100, which wouldn't be insane, right? I mean, look at a couple areas where the stock actually rejected and then found support. So it rejected at 104, rejected at 104, came up, use it as support, support, reject, use it as support, 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 reject. So this is an area that's clearly defined as a price point that I would be interested in. So I'm kind of trading between these two zones. That's why I think that this is potentially a buy. Nike, iconic brand. Yeah, their sales were awful. Their inventory build was insane. They got too much into the lifestyle branding and missed a revenue potential. But I don't believe that the company is dead in the water, especially when it traded at all-time highs of $180 a share. I mean, you're down $100 a share. Could be something good to start nibbling at and acquiring. I talked about the banks. So US Bank was one that I went long last week in my watch list when I told you to watch for the break to the upside. I don't think that there's more good news in the cards for this bank, in all honesty. And why is that? Just looking at the margin compression of Wells Fargo on Friday's earnings release, and it sold down 7%. That was pretty insane. So what would I be watching here? I'm going to do the exact opposite. I'm going to play for an actual reject of this one to the downside. So I'm going to watch and see if we get a little bit of a push higher. I don't think their margin is improving whatsoever. I think their credit losses are probably going up and deposit costs are increasing. You also had the vice chairman of the bank who runs consumer and business banking that is, quote unquote, taking retirement. So to me, that's not very good news. So what I would be doing is I would be looking, if you own the stock, to be selling covered calls and to potentially, again, I can't predict the future, but I would be looking to ride this one lower back down to 38.87. So you'll note here that we are in a wedge. It's very defined: support, push up, support, push up, support, push up. I think we're coming back down. Again, I'd be selling covered calls if I own the stock. If I don't own the stock, which I do not, I would be looking to buy some puts to the downside. Once we get to the top of this channel, I'd watch for the top of that channel, how we open on Monday, right? So we started to push up to it. I'd love to see us get a little bit higher, so maybe 42.82, 42.75. But if we start to fail, I definitely think we're pushing lower. And I believe they announce earnings, is it on Wednesday? On the 17th, they do. Wednesday the 17th. And then again, just looking at Wells Fargo, again, Wells beat, but look at this drop, 7%. I mean, so when banks are missing, they are just brutally selling these things. And let's take a look at the earnings on Wells. Again, they did surprise on the overall EPS and on revenue, but what came down was the margin. The margin was still too high. So the expectations were missed, and therefore they just sold into this thing. So the banks can create some volatility around earnings. Again, until the Fed really starts actually lowering rates, I don't see a reason to own them. Let's take a look at another one. Airlines just really got beat up. Delta Airlines, really bad earnings. And what do you get out of that? Well, let's go with some of the other sympathy plays. So the one I want to watch is American Airlines. Why this one and not Delta or the others? A couple reasons. One, I want you to note how close we are to almost getting into the single digits. When a stock goes from a double digit to a single digit, psychologically, that is not a positive, right? You'll see this huge gap drop to the downside. We are in a trend down. We missed this bounce level. So let me zoom in a little so you could see what it did on the daily. On the daily, it gapped down and then it started to push back up. And now what do I think it's going to do? I think it's heading lower. Where do I think this one's going? And unfortunately, I've flown American Airlines several times over the last 60 days, and the experience has not been good. And the mechanical issues have been fairly challenging. So I would look for a push down maybe to this $9 put would be a good play going out to this Friday's expiration. Why? Because they're announcing earnings on Thursday. Now, do I think that they're going to beat and guide and raise higher to the upside? No. The airline industry right now, even though travel is at an all-time high, is really struggling from the overall cost of fuel, maintenance issues, and then again, Boeing just has nothing good to add to the overall market. Let's look at one more. I want to watch Nvidia. So this was another huge sell to the downside. You will note that we have made a lower high. So this was the all-time high in Nvidia up here to 140. They pushed it all the way down here to 120. We are now trading between this range. Huge bearish engulfing candle. They pushed it up on Friday, but they couldn't hold it and they started to sell into it as the market closed. Let's go into a 1 hour time frame. How would I play this one? Well, what I would be doing is I would love to see overall weakness. And then what I would watch is this pivot right here. If you get below 124, then I would definitely target the 120 put. If I was going to get some strength, let's do this. I'm looking for a fib level from a pivot high to a pivot low. Look at exactly what we did. We're rejecting the 50. So I would want to see it recapture 133.08 to push up to the 134.94, surpass this pivot high of 137.32, going back up to 140. But my bias is going to be to the downside. I think this movement and what happened over the last couple of days has scared a lot of investors that this market is extremely expensive. So therefore, again, I try not to have a bias to the downside, but the market just can't keep making all-time highs every day. I mean, that's just greed and FOMO. And as you guys know, when a market corrects, that's how you'll get, 200, 300, 400, 500% returns in a given day when you're in puts. So don't fight the trend, start with the news, and hopefully this gives you something to think about as the week progresses. With that, have an amazing week. And if you have not joined one of my masterclasses, I have one coming up in August, and I'm not sure if that's going to be the last one of the year. I might do one more in September, but then I am definitely taking off the holidays. So if you're interested, get in now. Seats are almost full. I'm definitely shutting this class down by the end of the week. So I'm almost to capacity. And with that, I appreciate all of you. And if I can help, never hesitate to ask. Take care.